Hi, I'm Neha Matthews, and you're listening to Three Things, the Indian Express news show. On today's episode, we will be taking a look at why the consumption of milk and pulses has slowed down in India, and what US President Trump had to say about trade in India on the first day of his visit. But first, the violence in Northeast Delhi. Soon after, a rally was taken out by BJP leader Kapil Mishra near a demonstration against the CAA in Northeast Delhi's Jafrabad on Sunday. Clashes erupted between pro and anti-CAA protesters. Continuing into its second day, the clashes have seen the death of a Delhi police constable and a civilian at the time of this recording. Protesters from both sides and at least 37 police personnel were injured in the violence. Shops, houses, and vehicles have been set ablaze. Tear gas shells were lobbed to control crowds. Sources close to the Ministry of Home Affairs told the Indian Express that the violence appears to be orchestrated to coincide with the visit of US President Donald Trump. But the nature of this violence leaves a lot to be questioned. Now, Kapil Mishra was previously in the news for the Desh ke Gaddaron ko chant in a pro-CAA rally in December, and he recently lost his seat in the Delhi elections from the Model Town constituency. In a video released by him after the violence, Mishra can be heard threatening the anti-CAA protesters.
हमारे सामने खड़े हैं। मैं आप सबके बिहाफ पे ये बात कह रहा हूँ, ट्रंप के जाने तक तो हम शांति से जा रहे हैं, लेकिन उसके बाद हम आपकी भी नहीं सुनेंगे अगर रास्ते खाली नहीं हुए तो। ठीक है, आज जब तक रास्ता खाली करवा रहे हैं, ट्रंप के जाने तक आप जाफराबाद और चांदबाग खाली करवा लीजिए, ऐसी आपसे विनती कर रहे हैं। उसके बाद हमें रोड पे आना पड़ेगा।
To unpack what happened on Sunday and how this violence started, Amil Bhatnagar and Soumya Lakhani, who were reporting on the violence, join us now to discuss how it started, why it is communal, and what they have witnessed taking place.
Between Friday and Saturday, there were messages being circulated in Jafrabad area about a large sit-in protest to be taking place from Saturday night onwards. This was also in addition to the Bharat Bandh call given by Bhim Army's Chandrasekhar Azad. His entire protest was like a large countrywide protest against NRC and CAA. So the local messages being spread across, plus the Bhim Army Chandrasekhar Azad's message. So in adherence to that, a large group of people, mostly women and children, sort of like Shaheen Bagh protest, they gathered underneath the Jafrabad metro station at around 11:30 in the night on Saturday. And they had planned to sit there for quite some time till a resolution is passed and like the general protests that are taking place. This is Saturday night, and then till Sunday afternoon, the protest is going on fine. The numbers are increasing over the night. Initially, it started with, with a few hundred people. By Sunday morning, the numbers had swelled. Slogans were taking place, chanting was taking place, like just the nature of protests that are happening right now. On Sunday afternoon, Kapil Mishra, the BJP's candidate, Kapil Mishra, a former MLA, he tweeted saying that I will take out a rally, a pro-CA rally, in opposition to this anti-CA protesters that are sitting in Jafrabad at around 3 p.m. in Mojpur Chowk. Now, Mojpur Chowk and Jafrabad are one metro station away from each other. So now you have a group of 500 people sitting for anti-CA protests in Jafrabad. And now Kapil Mishra comes to Mojpur Chowk, few kilometers away, and takes out a pro-CA rally. Now, those numbers are also decent. They keep growing as the afternoon. As I was there till at around 3 when I saw Kapil Mishra, there were around 50-60 people with him. By 4:30, the number had gone up to easily, say, around 400-500. And now this crowd was very charged. There were chants of Jai Shri Ram, slogans that were heard during the polling time, Desh ke Gaddaro ko, Goli Maro Salo ko. Those sort of chants and slogans were being taken out by that crowd. Now it's 4:30 p.m. Kapil Mishra is seen leaving the crowd. Between 4:30 and 4:45 p.m., there are reports of stone pelting in certain parts of Mojpur Chowk. When I reached the spot, the stone pelting was going on in huge numbers. Like there was an entire crowd of 500 people from anti-CA protesters, and there were 500 people pro-CA protesters. And they were all trying to injure each other. Both sides were throwing stones. I mean, there is little clarity as to what exactly triggered it, but it happened immediately after Kapil Mishra's rally got over, because the proximity of the area in which the stone pelting took place and the area in which the rally was held was around 10 to 15 meters. So that happened. It followed the entire procession that was taken out. Everyone was trying to injure each other. It was a chaos. It was also communal in nature, because when I was speaking to security officials and a lot of other people, they were telling me that the locals had also gotten involved, who might not have been protesters per se as well, but local Hindus and local Muslims were also part of it. So that is how it was taking place.
And Amal, you were there yesterday. You're seeing visuals coming out of Mohajpur and Jafrabad today. Can you give us an eyewitness account of the sort of things that were happening? We've heard about shops being set on fire, vehicles set on fire.
By Sunday evening, of course, the stone pelting had taken to very different forms of aggression and violence, where people were trying to get all the shops closed. People were attacking a vehicle. In front of me, there was a swift car. It happened to be right in the middle of two protesting, groups of people. And after 5 minutes, it could be seen crushed and absolutely destroyed by the crowds and everywhere. On Monday itself, several reports had been coming in of petrol bombs being thrown into establishments, cars, vehicles being burnt. In fact, there were reports of injuries to several police officials as well. And on Sunday evening, I could clearly see that the police officials were standing on one side for a very long time while the stone pelting was taking place. In fact, one of the videos that I recorded, you could see uniformed security officials throwing stones at anti-CAA protesters as well. So you could say that there was a complete breakdown of law and order in that particular area, because the stone pelters were running like havoc. I could see that for at least 10 to 15 minutes, there was just stone pelting happening and no police official was even intervening. It was only after a while they could walk in and push the people to the other side and, somehow contain even a more serious sort of a riot. Even then, you could see that the area was on edge, right? There was tension in the area because there's one group chanting Jai Shri Ram, chanting, slogans on those lines, and there's another crowd being pushed away on the other side to maintain, some sort of an order. So after 6:30, you could say that, the seeds were being sown for a larger riot or a larger, conflict between two parties. And on Monday, you could see it all taking shape in terms of, what's been happening the entire day.
We're seeing also destruction of public property, specifically Muslim property happening, right?
Right. Yes. There are pockets in the areas where the anti-CAA protesters were there and the local Muslims were there. You could see that the entire crowd was trying to be, aggressive and trying to push through the entire place, just try and harm and cause destruction in those areas as much as possible, and with little and sometimes to even no intervention of local police forces.
So we then have this BJP leader, Kapil Mishra. After he leaves, he also tweets this video of him talking with the police officers around him, giving them an ultimatum of 3 days, saying clear out the roads and we're going to be quiet till US President Donald Trump is here. But after that, we will take matters into our own hands. Now, all of this what do you call a breakdown of law completely. What has been the police reaction to this? Have you talked to any police officials?
Since the last 2 days, the police is trying to maintain this narrative that, they're trying to control the crowd. And there's been very little conversation with regards to Kapil Mishra's actual involvement or, his words that have possibly led to such actions. In my conversations with the Joint Commissioner of Police yesterday, Alok Kumar, he said that they're in the process of identifying who perhaps would have caused a law and order situation. In the little version, they said that, there are miscreants that could have entered this area to try and disturb peace and harmony in the region. So they are trying to identify them through CCTV footages, and they're trying to understand as to what's happening. And FIRs have also been filed in several stations. But right now, Kapil Mishra is scot-free. There is no criminal action as of now pending against him, even though the locals and several people in the area allege that it was his address, it was his procession and rally that perhaps could have caused certain communal tension in the area, which perhaps led to that riot. So the police right now is maintaining they haven't pinned him down on anything yet. Like there's no warrant against him or no action against him so far. This is how the Delhi police has responded so far.
So Soumya, Amil talked about how the violence broke out on Sunday, and what he observed was, a state of complete lawlessness. I wanted you to give us a sort of record of what happened on Monday, what you experienced while you were reporting on the story.
So, Sunday night was obviously quite tense. We were all getting updates on social media about maybe there were chances of violence breaking out again on Sunday night, late Sunday night, early Monday morning. And then the first report of stone pelting came Monday morning at about 11 a.m. Stone pelting from both sides. Delhi police had cordoned off this 100-meter stretch, which sort of, which was the main thing, which was between the pro-CAA and anti-CAA protesters. This was in the morning. And then, obviously more police was called in and we thought things would normalize, but everything sort of took a worse turn after 2 p.m. when there were these 3 vehicles that were set ablaze. Then obviously I witnessed petrol bombs were being flung into homes and shops with specifically targeted, like you knew that why these homes and shops were being targeted, and petrol bombs were thrown. Now, what kind of really shocked us was the police in action. The fact that there are hundreds of men throwing petrol bombs, breaking shutters with sticks and rods, and pelting stones, and Delhi police personnel in their riot gear were just standing without doing anything about that.
There are videos of them also throwing stones. Is that verified?
There are videos, and not only are there videos, a colleague of mine also witnessed police personnel retaliating to stone pelting by flinging stones themselves. That happened. Then at about 3:30, 3:45 p.m., I would say, police threw these tear gas shells at one section of the protesters, which kind of led to the stampede-like situation, and everybody sort of rushed inside these lanes. So, the situation has been tense throughout the day. I don't think it has been peaceful. I'm talking about Maujpur specifically. We had colleagues who were there in Yamuna Vihar. We had another colleague. We were sort of split across a lot of places. There was Chandbagh, there was Jafrabad. So there was violence breaking out at all of these places. And sadly, there is one head constable. His name is Ratan Lal, who passed away. Then there was a civilian, a Maujpur resident, father of 2 kids, about 32 years old, Muhammad Furqan, who also passed away. He had a bullet injury in his leg and he died of excessive bleeding. Now, one more thing that came to the fore was that Delhi Fire Service was called, but they were unable to make it to the spot because it was so volatile. It's been a riot-like situation in Northeast Delhi, I'd say.
As India struggles with a financial slowdown, various sectors have seen a drop in consumption. The auto industry has seen a hit and the sale of fast-moving consumer goods has slowed. But has the slowdown also affected the food habits of Indians? The National Statistical Office has withheld its household consumption expenditure survey report for 2017 and 18, but alternative data sources suggest that Indians are buying less and less of 2 very ubiquitous food items, dal and milk. Partha Sarthi Biswas, who covers agricultural affairs for the Indian Express, joins me to discuss why food data points towards a shifting Indian plate.
If you look at the data that was shared in that conference, we can see a slight tapering in and almost stagnation in consumption of pulses across the country. Now, if you look at the data from 2013-14 to 2019-20, so in 1920 would be our extrapolation, there has been a slight dip in consumption, not a slight, quite a significant dip in consumption of dals. So, for example, consumption of dals had peaked in 2017-18 when India had reported consumption of 224 lakh tons of dal, while it has post which it is slowing down. Now, prior to 17-18, all the other years have seen a healthy growth. So, to cite an example, 13-14, India had reported 185 lakh tons of consumption, which grew to 199 lakh tons, then went on to almost plateau at 195, and then it peaked at 17-18 at 224. Post that, however, we have seen a steady dip in dal consumption. So the figure of 18-19 was 220 lakh tons, and the 19-20 figure estimation by IPGA, it talks about 207 lakh tons of dal being consumed.
Dal and other such pulses are not the only food item to see a slowdown. It's also milk.
Similarly, if you look at the growth of consumption, if you look at the compound annual rate of growth of consumption, that is CAGR in case of milk, the growth rate has slowed down. So as the data that we have mentioned in our story, it shows that this data was from the National Dairy Development Board, which, as you would know, is the board which is responsible to monitor the milk situation and the milk situation of the cooperative dairies in the country. NDDB, most of the consumption of liquid milk is handled by the cooperative dairies, while milk products like dahi, buttermilk, flavored milk, ice cream is cornered by the private players. So the CAGR, that is the compound annual growth rate, was around 7.9 between 2008-9 to 2013-14, which since then has dipped to 3.8% in the last 14 years. Well, yes, the industry is growing, but the growth rate has shrunk. So what does this milk and pulses data point to? That people are not eating enough of protein. Pulses is the best source of vegetarian protein, and milk also is a very good source of vegetarian protein, liquid milk, or let it be paneer or anything of that sort.
Parthasarathy interprets this data to mean that there has been a shift in what India has been eating, that out of necessity, protein-rich food like milk and pulses are being skipped.
Now, food is cheap. The economic survey had a whole chapter on thali economics, talking about how food has become cheaper. But what are we eating? Does our thali has the requisite dal? Does it have the sabji? Does it have roti, chawal and all those things? Or maybe the glass of milk or maybe the bowl of curd? It does not look like so. People are eating enough, but they are concentrating more on the carbohydrates. So it would be, instead of dal, they are replacing dal with something like a gravy vegetable, or maybe the ones who eat non-veg, maybe they would have a boiled egg or something with their roti and dal. Why is this happening? Because vegetables have been cheap in the last 5 years, and dal is still haunted by the price mark of 200 rupees a kg, which it had seen during the 15-16 year when there was a scarcity of poor dal. So unfortunately, that phantom of 200 rupees a kg is still haunting the dal industry, and people have shifted their preference. If you look at the consumption pattern of dal, it almost appears that people are shying away from dal instead of preferring a gravy-based vegetable to replace dal in their place.
The problem is, we normally consider pulses and milk to be staple food. To choose to consume less of it then probably points at the fact that while their prices increase, our incomes have been growing very slowly.
Now, as I mentioned, that we had talked about the phantom of the 200 rupees a kg, which is still haunting the industry. Now, if incomes were steady, if the growth in incomes were steady, maybe that phantom wouldn't have mattered much. But now with incomes being unsteady and especially rural incomes falling, it almost looks like people are trying to save each and every penny and have shied away from dal. So even if there is a, say, 10 rupees or 20 rupees increase in pulses prices, people have almost given dal the divorce from that thali and have replaced with its vegetables. In case the incomes were rising, in case the rate of incomes were rising as it had happened, say, 2009 onwards, maybe this wouldn't have happened. People would have continued having dal. But since incomes are unsteady and now that a lot of slowdown is happening in both the rural sector and the semi-urban sector, people are thinking twice before spending anything.
I asked Parthasarathy how the traders have reacted to the slowdown. Incomes are not something they can control, so what measures would they instead take to increase the demand?
Dal is a staple. You travel across the country and you would come to hear the thali of any Indian would have dal. So in case of, say, Delhi, you would have dal chawal, and in South India you would have sambar and rice. Dal has many various forms and formats, but it has made its presence. Now, what traders are saying that because it's a staple and the competitive products like vegetables have been cheap, and the 200 rupees a kg phantom continues to remain strong, people have shifted. Most of the traders we spoke to, they talked about the NECC, that is the National Egg Coordination Committee, which in 1980s, the National Egg Coordination Committee had undertaken a major publicity drive wherein egg was advertised, egg was branded as a complete food. The benefits of having eggs, like for example, one egg has 6 grams of protein, has almost all the essential vitamins you require present. It was branded to people. Sunday yaho, Monday roz khao ande. That had become a catchline, and consumption of eggs has been increasing steadily post that. What traders are saying is that there was no effort made by anyone, either the industry or the government, to present dal as a very holistic food. Dal has always been in the shadow in the thali. So what they're saying is that, you project dal as a complete food. It has fibers, it has proteins, it has low cholesterol, it has almost no fat. So why don't we give the dal a branding exercise and make it a good, wholesome, complete food? Many of them point out how the growth in case of fast food like pizza, burgers or pastas have seen around 18% rise year on year. However, the growth on consumption of dal is actually in negative. So most people are saying that instead of trying to push the consumption in an indirect manner, that is like pushing dal through PDS or anything, which has chances of pilferage, why don't we brand dal? Maybe a campaign to highlight the importance of dal in our food, maybe how to project dal as a whole food. For example, in Canada, in US, the concept of vegetarian protein is coming up, and they are talking about how meek and humble pulses can be the magic food for people who want to grow lean muscles, who want to be competing in international events. So maybe something on similar lines should be taken up in India to inculcate the habit of having dal. If that happens, consumption might peak up.
Massive bonhomie was a display at the Namaste Trump event in Ahmedabad on Monday as both Prime Minister Narendra Modi and US President Donald Trump heaped praises on each other.
My friend, India's friend, the President of the United States of America, Mr. Donald Trump.
America loves India. America respects India. And America will always be faithful and loyal friends to the Indian people.
Trump also announced defense deals between the two countries worth $3 billion. Calling Prime Minister Modi a tough negotiator, Trump announced that both the countries are chalking out the biggest ever trade deals on his visit to India.
To build our defense cooperation, the United States looks forward to providing India with some of the best and most feared military equipment on the planet. We are in the early stages of discussion for an incredible trade agreement to reduce barriers of investment between the United States and India. And I am optimistic that working together, the Prime Minister and I can reach a fantastic deal that's good and even great for both of our countries. Except that he's a very tough negotiator.
The US President and Prime Minister Modi will sign various agreements and memorandum of understandings today.
You were listening to 3 Things by the Indian Express. Today's show, as always, was edited and mixed by our producer, Joshua Thomas. If you like the show, then do subscribe to us wherever you get your podcasts. You can also recommend the show to someone you think will like it. Share with a friend or someone in your family. It's the best way for people to get to know about us. You can also tweet us at Express Audio and write to us at podcasts@indianexpress.com.